So tonight we're going to be talking about using maps in your family history research and how maps can help you find where your surnames are located. Okay, so maps are useful tools. They place your ancestors in context with their surroundings. It helps you understand what was happening during their lives, and it helps you locate other family members, visualize immigration patterns, and tell their stories. So we're going to talk about different mapping resources that are available, how you can build your own maps, and how you can use these in your research. So current maps provide insight in geographic features that may have been important to your ancestors. You know, looking at a map of today, you can see the geographic features, the rivers, the coastlines, the mountains, and things of that sort. But looking at historic maps, they can help you determine the boundaries and where your records might be. So this is an early map of Florida, and you can see that at this point in time, there were only 4 counties in Florida. 2 in the Panhandle, 1 around Jacksonville, Florida area, and then the other one is the Peninsular Florida area. So, you know, these maps, the boundaries change, the counties change, the state lines change, the countries change boundaries. So knowing where those boundaries were at the time when your ancestors were there helps you do your research. And you can also look at plat maps. And plat maps are those maps that show the property boundaries and how those have changed over time. And you can see how properties transfer between individuals, and that may give you some clues as you're doing your research. So I wanted to mention that you can discover maps using the Family History Guide. What the Family History Guide provides resources that help you discover map resources for your research. And you find these resources under the countries tabs. So here, for example, is the United States. And you can see here in the goals, there's goal number 2, locations and geography. And you can see part B is how to use maps effectively. And then it goes through and gives you some instructions and videos and to help you use US maps effectively in your research. But you can also go to other countries, for example, Germany. And you can see here in goal number 7, it's maps and gazetteers. And as you go down this page, you see it provides information about maps, different maps from different time periods in German history. You know, again, videos and other links to information on using maps and gazetteers. And these are all helpful in showing you how to use these resources in your research. Another thing that you'll want to look at is on Family Search, they have the Research Places page. And this helps you find historic names for places. So you can type in the current name for a location, and it'll tell you the previous names that that location has gone through. Or you can put in a historic name, and it'll tell you the present name for that area. And it'll give you a map, the basic information about that community or that location, historical information, when it was named certain names, research links, so things like Wikipedia and other web pages that may have information about that location, the alternate names and citations. So this is very helpful as place names changes. So most countries, you'll be able to find historic maps. This is an example from Germany. This is meyersgaz.org. So this is the Myers Gazetteer. And this is from the mid-1870s. The mid-1870s, shows you the maps of the area and provides some information about the communities that were there. And it'll even tell you, you know, where the nearest Catholic churches or Protestant churches or Jewish synagogues were in relationship to a location that you're researching. Or you can go to some of these large historic map collections, such as David Rumsey's maps. And this website is really great because what he's done here is he's taken those historic maps and he has geo-rectified them, meaning that he has geo-referenced them on top of Google Earth. So you can actually zoom into a location and see the historic map overlaying the current satellite imagery. And that's really helpful because then you can fade in and out of the historic map and see the underlying features. So here's an example. This is New York City. And if I did, you can see up here in the upper right-hand corner, there's a little zoom bar, and this is the transparency. So it's fully opaque now. But if I pulled that zoom bar to the left, or not that transparency bar to the left, then this area where the map is would be translucent, and you can see the information underneath. And you see the city blocks here on this map. Part of this map is currently Central Park, yes. But you can actually see the map underneath this, and you can see where all these city blocks that were there in the 1800s are no longer there. That's Central Park. So this map is from 1852. Another thing I like using my maps for is to look at the land grants. And you may know that the Bureau of Land Management, their glowrecordsblm.gov website, has these historic images of the land grants that were issued by the U.S. government. And, you know, the great thing is these land grants provide information about a location where that land was. So you can see down here, this talks about the land grant for James A. Walker, which was the west half of the northeast quarter and the east half of the northwest quarter of Section 12, Township 18 South, Range 24 East, the Tallahassee Meridian, 160 acres in Lake County, Florida, and this land grant was issued 22 November 1888. So that's a lot of great information, but how do you map that information so that you can find it, you know, where that property is located? Well, when you find these land grants, there's also a potential that you may find the survey information. And here is the survey area for that. So you see this is Township 18 South, Range 24 East. And what I've put in there in that red box is the description of the land that was on that land grant. So now I know where that parcel is in relationship to other features that are on the ground. I can also take that information and put it into a current USGS topographic map. And you can see, you know, I've outlined that same location. Now, what's interesting is, you know, you see these lakes and other features here. You see Lake Griffin, which is located down here in the on the eastern side of this map. And if I go over, this is Lake Griffin right here, this large lake. So, you know, the water bodies don't match up exactly, but, you know, it's close enough to tell you you're in the right general vicinity. And plat maps are the other ones, another type of map that I really enjoy using. And these plat maps show the property boundaries. And these were done periodically because, you know, the location, the county that was doing the plat maps needed to know who owned what lands for tax purposes, for land ownership purposes. And so, you know, every few years they would update these maps so they could see who owned the lands. The other great thing is it provides these landmarks. So you can see here in this corner by the red box, I have a bump out here, and this is schoolhouse number 2 that's located at this intersection. And then down a mile south of that, you see the convent, and you see the cemetery, and you see the church. This is St. Joseph's Church. That's what it says right here by the picture. So now you're getting some landmarks to see what was in that general region. So of course, this family that lived in this area that I have marked off in red would have gone to St. Joseph's Church, most likely, and they would probably be buried in this cemetery that's located there. It's only a mile away from their property. And their children would have probably gone to schoolhouse number 2, which is located right at the edge of their property. The other great thing that these plat maps give you is who are the adjacent landowners. And you can compare that over time. So notice this 110 acre parcel right here is G. Severin heirs. And so this is important. So this is the family I'm researching. This is George Severan's, and you notice it says it's his heir's property. So he's deceased. And this is, who he has willed it to, his heirs. Well, in 1898, the landowner is Catherine Severin. So that's interesting. So now, we went from George Severin to Catherine Severin. Well, in 1917, it's now owned by Henry Westerheide. So what happened in that time frame between 1880 and 1917? Well, I'll give you a little background. George Severin and his family left Ohio and went to Kansas to start farming there. And they took along a farmhand with them, along with the family. And they were there for a couple years, and then George died. And so that left Catherine with the farm in Kansas, along with her children and the farmhand. So in this 1880 record, the heirs own this property. So George is deceased, and so the heirs own the property. By 1898, Catherine had moved back and was living on this property. And now in 1917, Henry Westerheide owns this property. Well, Henry was the farmhand that they took out to Kansas with them. He ended up marrying Catherine. So I was able to follow the track of this land and track, the story behind that. The other thing that's interesting is you can see the neighbors and how they changed ownership. So here's Joseph Rolfe and Henry Frilling. You can see J.H. Heitkamp and then Henry Heitkamp. You can see B. Grisham, Bernard Grisham, and then Charles and William Grisham. So you can see these lands, B is probably Bernard, and then the heirs down here, and then the heirs were Charles and William. You also see this parcel down here. It says Henry Westerheide. Underneath the 1917 property, there's a little 20-acre parcel. It says Henry Westerheide also. So it's interesting that you can track this using these maps. Historic MapWorks is one of my favorite websites to get historic maps from. And they have an extensive collection, over 1.6 million historic maps from around the world. So you can go in and see county maps over a period of time in the United States. You can see how the county boundaries change with those maps. Those plat maps that I got were from Historic MapWorks. So in this case here, you can see a map from 1886 of Germany, and the pink area is Prussia. And these images are high quality images. So you can purchase the license to the image, or you can purchase the print version of the map. Or you can just, use the maps for your research and clip out the little bits and pieces that you're interested in using. And I'm sure that you've all used Google Maps and probably have used Google Street View to find where a store is or a residence or something like that. So what I really like doing is utilizing Google Street View to see if the buildings where your ancestors lived are still present. So you can see the first photograph here. This is from the 1930s. This is 42 West 21st Street in Jacksonville, Florida. And this is one of my wife's ancestors, and he's standing in front of his car in front of his house. Well, I can look at Google Street View, and in 2016, that house was still standing there. You can still see, the features of that house. The architectural features are still present in this 2016 house. So, it's interesting to see, are the places still there? I do this a lot with, people that I'm helping to do research. We'll pull up a census record and it'll have an address on that census record. And I'll be like, well, let's go and see the street view and see if that place is still there. Maybe it's an apartment complex in New York City and it's still there. Or maybe it's just a house in a small town and you can see if that house is still there. There's another site called whatwasthere.com, and this allows you to take those photographs that you have and actually overlay them on the street views for Google Earth or Google Maps. And you can twist and warp those photographs so they fit over the features you're looking at. So you can see here, this is that same house from the 1930 photograph, except the car is not in front of it. And you can see the neighbor's house right to the left of it. An identifying feature is the chimney on this house. And then in the lower picture, I have faded the picture out. You can still see the overlay of the photograph, but now you can see the actual street view from Google Earth or Google Maps, and you can see the house behind it. You can see the chimney, and then you can see the neighboring house with its chimney here, and you saw the chimney in the first photograph from the historic photo. So it's an interesting way to compare what was there previously with what's there today. And the great thing about what was there is you can zoom into any location that you're interested in. So in this case here, this is Jacksonville, Florida. And you can see all of the orange pins show different areas where photographs have been added to the map. Downtown Jacksonville had 79 photos. A little further south of that was 8. A little further north of that was 7. So you can see the numbers that are in these pins telling you how many photos are there. And you can also see the inlays of the photos. There's 134 photos nearby, and you can sort through those photos and see the street view of those photos. So here's an example. I've zoomed in, and this is an example of one of the parks there known as Confederate Park. And you can view the photo details, or you can view the street view with the overlay of that photo. And this photo was taken in 1933. So these are some photos that I added into the street view there because of a project I was doing about the history of the parks in Jacksonville for a class I was teaching. And I was taking all of these postcards that were, done of these parks and adding these postcards in over the street view images. There's another similar site called historypin.org. And HistoryPin allows you to find your location and then upload your photographs for that location. So in this case here, the 3 photos I have up top are the sawmill for August Wise. And August Wise was my great-grandfather. This sawmill was built in 1890, and it was burned down. It caught fire and burned. So I've got the newspaper article about the mill being burnt. I've got the pictures of August. He's the third from the left with 2 of his children, and then some of the workers in the mill, and most of those are his cousins or his in-laws. And then a picture of the sawmill, showing the lumber. And if you look in the middle of the map, you'll see a green number 2. That green number 2 is for Fort Laramie, Ohio, and that shows the number of photographs that were uploaded. At that time, there were 2 photographs, and now there's several more that have been added into that. There's a page called Topotech, which is basically the same thing as the history pin. And it provides geolocated photos in Central Europe. So it started out in Austria, and it's moved out from Austria. But when you go in, you can zoom in on the satellite image. It's a Google satellite image, again, of a location. You can type in the town that your ancestors came from, if they were from Central Europe. And then you can see these historic photographs for that town. In this case here, the town was Bad Sauerbrunn. And you can see there are 431 photographs from that area. And you can click on the individual photographs, and it gives you the photograph, and it shows you the location and direction that photograph would have been taken from on Google Earth. And then it gives you a description of those photos. So again, this started out in Austria, but it's expanding pretty rapidly into other countries in Europe. So you can also create your own maps in Google Earth and Google Maps. You only have to know how to use Google Sheets, the spreadsheet formula there, and then how to import that information in. And I'll show a couple demonstration maps and how you can do this. So in this case here, I've created a spreadsheet for the town of Minster, Ohio from the 1940 census. And you can see the first column is the street address. So the 1940 census gives you the street address of all of the households. So I've got the street address. The next column is the town, Minster, Ohio. And then I've got the head of household, the page number of the census, the line number of the census, And then I've got the family search link, and that family search link brings me right to the image of the census. And then I have the family search PID, and that PID number goes right directly to the head of household family page on family search. So now I've got all of these individual families. You can see here, these are pages 1A and 1B, just to give you an example. And you see all of the families here, the line numbers, and all of the links to those pages. So in Google Maps, if you look, there's a little hamburger menu up in the search bar, little 3 horizontal lines. If you click on that, you get this link to Your Places. And Your Places is where you create your own maps. So if I click on the Your Places, I get a list of all the maps that I've created. And you can see if you click on the maps here, that'll give you this list. And then down at the bottom, you have a link for Create Maps. And that's what you're going to do is you're going to click that Create Maps, and then you have an Import button. And when you import, you're going to be importing a layer. And that layer is directly coming from your spreadsheet. So you can do this in Google Sheets. You can do it in Excel. As long as you can save the data in a table format like Google Sheets or Excel, you can import that data in. So I've imported in that data layer, and you can see I've zoomed in on part of South Main Street, and you can see these sort of olive colored pins with the houses, and you can see in the key, those are from page 1B of the census. And if you look, you can see the name of the head of household. So the top one up here is Henry Dickman. The next one down below that is Janet Wagner, and then Wilbur Lammers, and so on. And you can see that these pins locate themselves pretty well right above the houses that are there today. So if I click on one of these pins, I then get some detail that I've put into that spreadsheet. So whatever you put into that spreadsheet is the detail that's going to come up when you click on those pins. So you can see here, I've clicked on the Henry Hinker house, and it tells me this is 130 South Main Street, Minster, Ohio, census page 1B, line 50, and then the link to the census record and the link to his PID page on family search. And I can click on those links and then go directly into those records. Now you can do something even, a little bit different than that. You can do a migration pattern for your family. So in this case here, I'm showing the migration pattern for Corydon Reeder, one of my wife's ancestors. He was born in 1829 in Montgomery County, Ohio. And you can see in the spreadsheet in October of 1852, he was in Oregon. Well, in February of 1852, he was in Louisa County, Iowa. So what I'm showing here is that the dates can be years, days, months, whatever format you want them to be in, or whatever is available on the records you're using. The location can be counties, it can be cities, it can be latitude and longitude, anything that gives you a physical location that the map can identify. The next column in is a record type. So a birth record, a marriage record, a post office notification. Back in the 1800s, they would notify you by the newspaper that you have a letter in the post office. So the newspaper would list, so-and-so of, Corydon Reeder of Oregon City. You have a letter in the post office, come pick it up. You can see I have a state census in there, a U.S. census, a county land claim, and so on. And then over here, I've got links to some of those documents. So I've imported that data in just as I did with the other data. I went in, hit the 3 little hamburger menu. I went to My Places. I created a map. I imported the data. And then I told it to track, by chronological order. And so it tracks the data and it follows the street path, the road path, to connect up all of these in chronological order. And when I click on any of these, the information I have in the spreadsheet will pop up. You'll see also a black line, and that black line is the flight line to those areas. So it's the direct path, not the highway path to those locations. Family Search does something very similar to that. If you go to the timeline for your person, it gives all of these different events in their life. And if you turn on the map, it then plots all of those events on the map. And then down in the corner of the map, it shows show route or hide route. In this case here, I've clicked show route, and it then connects all of these routes in chronological order on the map. So it's basically the same thing I just did in Google Maps. Google, our Family Search will do it also. You will not get, street addresses or anything that detailed. It's mainly, the census record comes from this county or this township in this county or this town in that county sort of thing. So Google Earth does something very similar. The difference between Google Earth and Google Maps is that Google Maps is on the web. So it's a web-based mapping tool that you use whenever you're asking Google for directions. Google Earth is a downloadable program from Google, and it provides some other functionality that Google Maps doesn't do. So again, I've created an Excel spreadsheet or a Google Sheet. I then go into File and I click on Import. And when I click on Import, it asks me what file I want to import. So here is my 1940 census sheet. And I'm going to open that and add that to my record. And now you can see in the box over here underneath the search, you can see under my places, I have Auglaize 1860. I have Minster 1940 census. And so the Minster 1940 census data is right here in my tree. I can turn it on or turn it off. Notice I have it clicked on, so I see all of these pins located here for the sites that I've added, and I can click on those pins, and then I get some information up above. And this is the information from the census record. Again, the person's name, the street address, the census page, the line number, the link to the census, and the link to the PID for the person on Family Search. So I can do this for everybody in my neighborhood, that I'm researching, and I can go back and forth and, see who lived next door, who lived across the street, who lived, 2 houses down. Or I can even go in and see all the names of the people and click on certain names to show where they were in relationship to the house that I'm researching. So, say his, future wife lived in the same town. Well, I can turn on the wife's information and show where that was in relationship to where he lived, sort of thing. The other interesting thing about Google Earth, the useful thing, is that you can import your own maps. So as I was mentioning with David Rumsey's maps, they're all geo-rectified. He's taking those digital copies of those paper maps, overlaid them over Google Earth in the satellite imagery, and then modified them to fit over the existing structures, the existing landmarks. So here I've imported in a plat map. Okay, and this is from Auglaize County, Ohio, same county I've been working with the whole time. You see the pink area down here. This is part of the town of Minster. But you can see underneath the map, you see the Russia and Houston and Sydney, Fort Laramie. Minster is way up in the middle of the map. You see all these little towns. So the map is imported in very large. I have to shrink this. So you can see on this map, there are some green corners. There's some top bars and bottom bars. There's crosshairs in the middle. All of these give me the ability to drag and drop. So I can drag this crosshair and move the map over, to a different direction. I can squish it by pulling the top or the bottom up and down and sort of compress it. I can do the same thing with the left and right sides. Or I can take the corners and I can pull the corners in. And that's going to allow me to shrink it so that it actually fits over the small town of Minster on this map. So basically what I've done is I've imported the map. I tell it where the map is located on my computer. I set the transparency for it. I can add web images. If it's a map on the internet, I can add that in there and move it in. I've even done things like taking the weather forecast. So, the radar images, and I can import those in because I can steal the web address for the radar image on a weather center's map, and I can pull it in and put it here, and it'll be animated and show me the weather anytime I look at it. So you can do a lot of things with these maps. So I've compressed the map. I've fit the land boundaries over top of the existing land markers. I have the roads over top of the existing roads. And so I've got it pretty close. It's not exact, but it's pretty close. And then what I've done is I've imported in the information for each of the landowners on a certain location. So my interest here is in J. Stevie. This is Joseph Stevie. This is one of my ancestors. So what I did here is I took the information, I click on the box, I add information to it. I've added a photograph. I've copied the transcription or the indexed record from Family Search. So all of this information is the information I would see on Family Search if I clicked on the index information. You can see down below, it gives me the link to the indexed record. So, I can do this. I can keep adding information to all of these landowners. So you can see, what was going on in 1860. So this is the 1860 census overlaying the plat maps for that time period. So those are some ways that you can use those maps for part of your research, but I want to switch over into surname mapping. And surname mapping gives you an idea of the distribution of a surname. And this shows where the surname is found and the frequency that is found in those areas. So it helps you focus your research. So let's say that you were doing research and you saw in the 1880 census that your ancestor immigrated from Germany. While that's somewhat useful, it at least tells you they're from Germany. However, you don't know where in Germany that person came from. So how do you narrow down your search instead of having to search every place in Germany? Well, these surname maps use sources such as census and directories for those countries to locate and map the surnames. So you're using these records, these census records, these city directories to locate where those names are present. So some of these surname maps are in paper format. This is an example of an Irish surname map, and you can see, all the surnames that are listed there. Now, part of my wife's family comes from County Mayo, which is this county right below where it says Ireland. You can see the Mayo, and it's the Churchill family. So, I could go through all of these names that are listed here and try to find Churchill. That's pretty tough. It's not an easy thing to do. But this is how, the maps were done prior to the internet. With the internet, we've got a lot more capabilities. So this is one of the GeoGen websites for German surnames. This is a legacy site. This is one of the Generation 1 sites. But I'm looking up Garman, Garmann, which is one of my family names. And when I put that name in here, what do you notice about this map? You notice that all of the, predominant Garman distribution is up here in this northwestern area of Germany. And its highest dominance is in one small region. And then just to the north of that is the next highest dominance for that surname. This webpage tells me that Garman can be found in Steinfurt in Nordrhein-Westfalen, where it's most frequent. And then the fewest are in Herzogtum Lauenburg in Schleswig-Holstein. So, you see these individual little ones down here in the south. There's a couple little individual sites where maybe one person is located, but that's probably not where my family came from. They probably came from this area of higher dominance of that surname. So this is the Legacy Stopel page. It's a really great page. It gives you a lot of great information. This is the Generation 4 Stopel page for GeoGen. You can see it's a different format. Again, I'm searching Garman, and in here it gives me some more details. It says it rendered 92 hits into 39 clusters. The peak value is 15. So that means that this tallest peak is 15 occurrences based on this record set that they have here. It also, you can use your mouse and you can drag and drop this image, and you can rotate it so you can see the images a little bit better. It also tells me that this name was searched 54 times in the last 24 days. So there's other people searching for Garmin. You get a small inlaid map that's down below that information that shows you the density of the name in the different states in Germany. So, there's one that's a little bit higher density. You get a QR code up in the upper right-hand corner that you can use with your mobile device to send this information. And then down below that, you have this little star diagram. And this star diagram gives you alternate spellings or similar spellings for the similar names. So it has things like Carmen and Gorman and Corman, these different spellings. And if you click on those names, it'll then show you the distribution of those surnames. And you can see if they're in the same locations or not. Here's an example of a surname mapping site. This is called yourfamilyhistory.com. And this is the England and Wales records. And you can see right above the map, it says 1841, 51, all the way to 1911. So they're using the English and Wales census from 1841 every 10 years. The color coding gives you the density, the frequency of the name. And then you can see each of the counties and how many occurrences your name has in each of those counties. Right here, I'm searching the Coker name origins. So you see at the top, it says Coker name origin, meaning and family history. So as I scroll down a little further, it tells me the meaning of the name. It tells me what their occupations were. So, were the Coker families mostly farmers, or were they blacksmiths, or, what were the occupations that were the most common for that surname? So it gives me a lot of information that I can use. And as I go through, the different census years, I can see more and more information, how that name might be distributed differently across the map. There is also, other pages that link you right into records and help you do your research also. So how do you find these surname mapping pages for the countries you're looking for? Well, there's a couple web pages that consolidate some of these. Cindy's List is one of them. You can see, I've got a screenshot here of Cindy's List. You can see Celtic family names, GeoGen, which is the German stuff that I've just showed you, Irish family maps, ISOG surname maps, surname distribution analysis and mapping. So a lot of these different websites you can test out and see if they have the information you're looking for. Or you could go to Family Search, and in the wiki, you can search surname distribution maps, and you can go to the countries you're looking for. What I would recommend is, if your country, say Germany, has 2 or 3 different websites that do surname mapping, try all of them, because they may use different source records. One might be using the census, another one might be using directories. And you can see if those censuses and those directories give you consistent results or provide different information. They may even be using different years in their pages. So it's helpful to look at all of them that you can see. And ISOG, the International Society of Genetic Genealogy, in their wiki, they have surname mapping also. And you can see they have surname mapping for Argentina, Austria, Belgium, British Isles, the Czech Republic, France, Germany, Ireland, Italy, Luxembourg, Netherlands, Poland, Spain, and the United States, and then some other links below that. So you can go to these countries' links here and see what information is available to help you find those surname mapping resources. So I'm going to open it up now. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them.
Any questions for Miles? I just have one question. So the resources, different databases, maps, and so forth that you were showing us, do we assume that all of those are free access? Any of them require subscriptions or fees?
So most of them are free. Like the Historic Mapworks, you pay for the map if you want to order the map. you can view the map for free. And you can, play around with it for free. But if you want to order it, get a good quality print or a digital copy, you can pay for those. Most of the other ones are free. I just posted in the chat a link to the handout with all of the links that I talked about tonight. So if you go to the chat, you can take that link there and download the handout with the information. And it also gives you step-by-step information on Google Maps and Google Earth and building your own maps there. Yeah, I like the free websites. So I'll always, incorporate the free websites in the discussions when I do those. Any other questions?
While you're thinking, just a quick note, next Tuesday evening will be a presentation by Christy Pugh. She's going to be talking about the Family Search Partner Overview, Learning Ancestry, My Heritage, and Find My Past at 7 p.m. Get a note from Marianne. Thank you for the handout. I just downloaded it myself, so thank you again for that. Any other questions for Miles this evening? Personally, I thought it was fantastic. It has so many tools and things and directions that you wouldn't be thinking of, but some great ways to visualize your research, and that can lead you to more clues. So I thought it was very well done. Miles, thank you so much for sharing with us this evening, your expertise. And unless there are further questions, we'll wish everyone a pleasant evening, and we'll see you back next Tuesday for our upcoming class. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Bye-bye.